Hello everyone, welcome to Marxist Criticism. Today we're going to be looking at Hamlet and 1984 through a Marxist lens. But first, let's set up the basics. Marxist criticism, influenced by German philosopher Karl Marx, also going by the name of Marxist lens, functions similar to a pair of sunglasses, allowing you to see the world in a different color. Originally, it stemmed from Marxism, which was created as a response to the capitalist society at the time of its creation. It focused on the major ideas such as class struggle, the alienation of individuals, and cultural superstructure. To a Marxist, which is someone who follows said philosophy, the structure of a capitalist society only benefits the bourgeoisie, where the owners are otherwise considered the upper class of the society. Meanwhile, the proletariat, also known as the worker or the lower class, is exploited for their work and has an overall lower quality of life. Thus, with these ideas established as being the basis for Marxism, the literary theory follows similar principles when analyzing a text. It seeks to figure out how the superstructure presents itself in a text, such as in the form of class division. Alongside this, it also makes note of how people from different classes interact with each other, whether it be in a positive or negative manner. In sum, Marxist criticism is used to analyze the social and economic state that lies in literature and how it influences the narrative and the characters in the text. Alright, let's start with Hamlet. In the time of Shakespeare, alongside the social structure of monarchy, there also existed the structure called the Great Chain of Being. The Great Chain of Being, in its simplest terms, was a class division that organized everything in the universe in order to grasp some sort of understanding of it. At the top of the chain was God, who is believed to be perfect in every way. Thus, he stands at the top of everything else in terms of importance. At the bottom of the list were the inanimate objects, as the fact that they weren't living made them the least important thing in the world. Shakespeare sat roughly at the middle of this list since he was a commoner, but this was by all means not the worst spot to be on the list. But if we take into account his position, the Marxist lens reveals to us that Shakespeare used Hamlet as a way to critique the chain and those who were higher up on it, revealing how its existence could lead to corruption and unrest among its diverse tiers. The first instance of Shakespeare criticizing the Great Chain of Being lies with the multiple appearances of corruption amongst the upper class. One of the first examples we see of this is with Claudius. In Hamlet, Claudius is the king, and as the king, he is found around the top of the Great Chain of Being. This means that he holds great power over those who are beneath him. Unfortunately, we see many glimpses of him being corrupted by this power, one of them being the following example.
Will you have the truth on't? If this had not been a gentlewoman, she should have been buried out of Christian burial.
Why, there thou sayest, and that more pity that great folk should have countenance in this world to drown or hang themselves, more than they're even Christian.
In this situation, the two gravediggers are discussing the odd burial of Ophelia. From their perspective, the fact that Ophelia is being considered to have a Christian burial is unjust. She committed suicide, which is a sin, and should make her ineligible to get her Christian rights. But, since she's well liked by the king, then that means that she's technically allowed to commit suicide, since the king will just grant her whatever she wants afterwards. This is completely unjust to the people of the lower classes, since if they were to do this, they will be buried as sinners. This corruption of power also leaks its way into families, once again involving Ophelia, although this time the corrupt person is Polonius. In terms of the order of the chain, men were said to be higher than women who were in the same class, especially if it was father and daughter. This imbalance of power is clearly seen between the two of them, with Polonius abusing his power over her. One of the best examples of this is in Act 2, Scene 2, which goes as follows.
At such a time I'll loose my daughter to him. Be you and I behind an arras then. Mark the encounter. If he love her not, and he not from his reason fallen thereon, let me be no assistant for a state, but keep a farm and cotters.
From this quote, it is evident that Polonius sees Ophelia as a tool that he has command over. Although he sees her as his daughter, she is also a pawn that he can use in his plans to figure out what's wrong with Hamlet, which is completely unjust to her. He might be considered higher up in the social hierarchy compared to her, but that does not mean that she shouldn't have the autonomy over what she does and doesn't want to do. In sum, these two situations show how Shakespeare sees the bourgeoisie as having too much control over others, and then abusing said control for their own gain. Obviously, whenever there is a demonstration of power to such an extent, there is also the temptation of others to gain a power similar to that. Shakespeare showed that this leads to social unrest, or in other words, lower classes attempting to climb up the ladder by any means necessary. One instance of this takes place outside the narrative of the book, although it is still made reference to as a major plot point. Before the events of Hamlet, the king was Hamlet's father, King Hamlet, but by the beginning of the play, we learn that the following things happened from the ghost of the king.
Thus was I sleeping by a brother's hand of life, of crown, of queen, at once dispatched.
From Claudius's actions, it is clear that he was jealous of King Hamlet's status and power as the king, and he wanted that for himself. In order to be able to climb the ladder and attain this position, he saw it fit to kill the king. The unrest created between the two classes forced conflict in order to redistribute power. Unfortunately, this is not the only instance of this happening. In a similar fashion, Hamlet accused both Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of only visiting for their own benefit in the following exchange.
Take you me for a sponge, my lord?
Aye, sir. That soaks up the king's countenance, his rewards, his authorities.
Hamlet sees through the lies of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and realizes that they are not here as friends, but instead as sponges. Although they originally came to Denmark to solely spy on Hamlet, they have now taken advantage of their stay by trying to get favors out of the king and queen. To do this, they've sadly betrayed Hamlet, showing that once again, in an effort to try to climb the ladder and get a taste of the upper class, they have pushed others to the side. That was what Shakespeare was demonstrating when critiquing the social unrest amongst the classes. The need to climb higher up the great chain of being leads to ascending by any means necessary, which unfortunately means hurting those who are closest to you. Overall, Shakespeare shows a clear distaste towards the existence of the great chain of being. Although its main goal is to bring understanding about the universe and be a source of all good, all it does is give status to those who are unworthy and creates conflict between the different classes in order to rise up the ranks. And in the end, Shakespeare shows how it all results in a futile structure when Hamlet says,
A man may fish with the worm that hath ate of a king, and cat of the fish that hath fed of that worm.
Through this clever wordplay, Shakespeare demonstrates that after death, status no longer holds value. Although a king may die a righteous death, his body will be eaten by the same worms that eat a beggar. In sum, the great chain of being, according to Hamlet, amounts to nothing except a worthless source of conflict, which is inevitably forgotten after death. Now let's move on to 1984. Written by George Orwell, the story takes place in a dystopian world in which a single governing party has control over the country called Oceania. In said world, there's a clear class division amongst the people. At the top, there's the inner party members, or otherwise known as the bourgeoisie. Next is the outer party members, who function as the middle class. And lastly, there's the proletarians, who, as Karl Marx describes them, are the lowest class in the hierarchy. Normally, this power distribution would go as follows. The upper class holds most of the power, followed by the middle class, who sometimes holds a bit of power, and finally the lower class, who holds no power. But in 1984, this idea was completely missing, since the inner party, or the upper class, held the absolute power over everything. But how is this possible? Well, if we follow the major critiques of capitalism and Marxism, this situation stems from the exploitation of labor, the dehumanization of the people, and the prevention of revolution. One of the most obvious ways that the inner party keeps power solely to itself is with the exploitation of labor. These ideas can be found in many places in the book, such as Winston describing his job at the Ministry of Truth, but that is merely a glimpse at the true corruption that lies inside the economic side of Oceania. In the theory and practice of oligarchical collectivism, we are told the following about the true purpose of the war.
War is a way of shattering to pieces, or pouring into the stratosphere, or sinking in the depths of the sea. Materials which might otherwise be used to make the masses too comfortable, and hence, in the long run, too intelligent.
From this, we are told that Oceania produces enough where it could support its people, and yet they decide not to use it. Instead, they send it to war in order to be consumed by useless conflict. Why would they do that? If the needs of the people are met, they become too comfortable. If they become too comfortable, there will be no need to keep producing surplus, which means more free time. Having more free time means that they have more time to look at the world around them and see how bad it truly is, which for the party means the beginning of opposition. But if the needs of the people are kept at a minimum, the proletariat will believe that they need to produce more in order to raise the quality of living, which means working more hours. Thus, their labor is being exploited by using it as a tool to keep them distracted, while the upper party can be corrupt with its power. Apart from exploiting the work of the proletariat, Marxism also says that the class division also dehumanizes the worker. In most cases, this is accidental, as it's a byproduct of the worker feeling oppressed. But for the party, their entire goal is to stay at the top, so they aim to dehumanize the population as much as possible. One of their main tactics to accomplish this is with Newspeak, the official language of Oceania. Although the language in the book is still a work in progress, with not many people actually knowing how to speak it, its objective has already been clearly laid out. Sam describes it as the following.
Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible, because there will be no words in which to express it.
The entire point of Newspeak is to get rid of the ability to express thoughts. Humans, unlike many other species, are born with the ability to express themselves through thought. But to the party, these thoughts are the enemy, as they can carry ill opinion towards them. At some point, these thoughts can lead to bigger problems, such as revolution. Thus, they believe that the only option is to get rid of thoughts, essentially dehumanizing the lower classes. Yes, they will still be able to form thoughts in their head, but because of Newspeak, there will be no way to express them verbally. With Newspeak condensing the vocabulary to words that encapsulate many ideas, the meaning behind a thought will be lost when it's being conveyed through Newspeak. So by introducing it, they can ensure that those who oppose their absolute power will be unable to express it ever, leading to the party never losing their power. Finally, as stated by Karl Marx, this kind of superstructure will lead to a revolutionary change that will bring down the classes and bring prosperity in the future. But as we can see in the book, the party has managed to eliminate this aforementioned threat of revolution. Specifically, they have done this by lowering the intelligence of the population and making those who are smart feel alienated. First, by lowering the intelligence of the population, they will not be smart enough to rebel. But what exactly does that mean? According to O'Brien, it means the following.
Until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious.
In simple terms, if the proletariat is kept at a low intelligence, they'll never realize that their lives are oppressed, thus they will never revolt. Contrarily, once they revolt, they'll see that their lives are terrible, as they'll finally see the corruption behind the inner party. Thus, the party keeps the pros in a sort of loop of ignorance, which they are incapable of escaping. Thus, they are unable to revolt. Unfortunately, this method doesn't work for everyone, so in order to keep the outliers from revolting, they are alienated. This is excellently demonstrated with Winston, who at first is completely against the party, wishing for its downfall at any cost. He also believes that the Brotherhood, the mysterious rebellion, will be the one to take down the party. Sadly, when he's caught by the thought police, he's told the exact opposite.
If you are a man, Winston, you are the last man. Your kind is extinct.
Winston is told that he is alone. There is no one else that wants to rebel like him, and all his efforts to take down the bourgeoisie and bring justice to the lower classes are in vain, since he's the only one that feels like this. By doing this, it will demotivate anyone who wants to rebel, as it will lose all sense of purpose. In the end, both these methods will ensure that no one will ever be able to take down the party, since no one will ever know about the corruption or be motivated to stop it. In conclusion, the party established this class division in Oceania by making all of Karl Marx's most hated aspects about capitalism into the cornerstones of the country. By ensuring that the people are constantly working and uninformed, the party can prevent any new opposition from rising and trying to take them down. Similarly, by alienating and dehumanizing those who are already resenting the party, they can remove and eliminate pre-existing opposition, furthering their control over the people. In the end, the party and its ideology are exactly what Karl Marx feared capitalism would become. In conclusion, both books show us the negative effects that can come with a class-driven society. Hamlet shows us the present-day problems that can exist, while 1984 warns us of the possible problems that can arise in the future.